The scream didn't come from the tiger. It came from the people who saw him first. A ripple of panic tore through the frozen clearing as a massive shape burst from the tree-iron, orange and black, cutting through the white like a living blade. Someone shouted, "It is charging." Another voice broke into hysterics. Rangers raised their rifles in unison, boots crunching in the snow as fingers tightened around triggers that had been trained for this exact nightmare. In the center of it all stood a woman who should not have been there. She was small, frail by any ordinary measure, wrapped in a wool coat too thin for Siberian winter. Her silver hair escaped from beneath a knit hat, lifting slightly in the wind. One gloved hand gripped a wooden cane, its surface worn smooth by decades of use. She did not run. She did not scream. She did not even step back. She stood still. The tiger came faster. Now, every bound ate up yards of frozen gravel. His shoulders rolled with terrifying power, muscles working beneath thick fur designed to survive the harshest cold on earth. Snow sprayed behind him as his paws struck the ground. This was no confused animal wandering to close. This was a full-grown Siberian tiger, a predator, weighing over 250 pounds, moving with the lethal certainty of something that had never forgotten how to kill. Someone yelled her name, though later no one could remember who it was. Another ranger shouted a command in Russian, sharp and urgent. The click of safeties disengaging sounded too loud in the open air. "My move," a voice cried out from behind her. "Get down." She didn't. Her name was Eleanor Whitmore, and at 82 years old, she had already lived through enough fear to recognize when running would not save her. The distance between them collapsed with horrifying speed. 50 yards, 40, 30. Those watching would later say time behaved strangely in those seconds, stretching and compressing all at once. Some swore they could see individual snowflakes hanging in the air. Others remembered only the thunder of their own heartbeat in their ears. The tiger lowered his head as he ran. That was when several of the rangers began to shout, to fire. Eleanor felt none of the chaos behind her. She felt only the cold air burning her lungs and the solid, familiar weight of the cane in her hand. Slowly, deliberately, she lifted it and held it out in front of her body, just as she had done so many times before. Her lips moved. She spoke a single word, barely louder than the wind. The tiger did not slow. To the people watching, this was the moment that sealed her fate. A woman who should have been protected, who should never have been allowed anywhere near a wild predator, had made the ultimate mistake. Shock froze them in place as surely as fear. Cameras shook violently in trembling hands. Someone began to cry openly. 10 yards, Eleanor could see him clearly now. The scar along his shoulder, the frost clinging to his whiskers, the unmistakable marking on his forehead, a dark, star-shaped pattern etched into his stripes, sharp and exact, the same marking she had traced with her finger 24 years ago. Her heart hammered, but not with terror, with recognition. 5 yards behind her, a ranger screamed now, and several rifles tracked the tiger's chest. Fingers hovered at the point of no return. One pull and this story would end in blood and regret. Then the impossible happened. The tiger slammed his paws into the snow and skidded sideways claws carving deep grooves as his massive body fought its own momentum. He stopped so abruptly that snow burst up around him in a white cloud, dusting Eleanor's coat and hair 2 yards apart. No one breath. The tiger stood there, chest-heaving eyes locked onto the woman in front of him. Up close, his size was overwhelming. His head alone was larger than Eleanor's torso. One swipe of his paw could have crushed her bones like dry twigs. Eleanor did not move the cane. She did not lower it. She simply looked up into his amber eyes, her own filling with tears she had waited decades to shed. For a long moment, nothing happened. The clearing was silent except for the tiger's breath and the distant crackle of radios no one was listening to any more than his ears flicked. His head tilted slightly to one side. A sound escaped Eleanor's throat, half a laugh, half a sob. It was the same tilt, the same curious angle she remembered from a time when those paws had been small enough to fit against her chest, when those eyes had looked at her from a body shivering with fever and fear. Instead of raw power, she whispered his name again, steady despite the tears. The tiger stepped forward, weapons lifted, and then he did not attack. He leaned down and gently closed his jaws, not around her arm, not around her body, but around the end of the wooden cane, not biting, not snapping, holding it the way a playful cub once had. A gasp rippled through the crowd, sharp and collective. Someone dropped a radio. Another ranger lowered his rifle without realizing he had done it. The tiger tugged once softly. Eleanor's grip loosened. She allowed it. He backed away a step, then another, guiding her forward as though inviting her to follow. His movements were controlled, now careful, almost polite. She took a step, then another. No one tried to stop her. No one could. When they reached a flat stone half buried in snow, the tiger released the cane and sat. He waited. Eleanor lowered herself slowly, her knees protesting, her breath trembling. The moment she was seated, the tiger lay down beside her, his enormous body pressing against her legs for warmth. His head settled near her hip. From deep within his chest came a sound so unexpected, so utterly wrong by everything science insisted on, that several people covered their mouths in disbelief. He purred. It was not loud, but it was unmistakable, a low, resonant vibration that carried through the frozen ground. Eleanor closed her eyes and rested her trembling hand on the top of his head, right over the star-shaped marking. "You came back," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Just like I promised." Behind them, trained professionals stood frozen in shock, their understanding of danger, instinct, and wildness unraveling in real time. What they thought was an attack had been something else entirely. What they believed would end in tragedy had opened a door into a truth none of them were prepared to face. And this moment, when a dying cub from the past met the woman who had saved him, was only the beginning. Long before anyone watched her stand unflinching before a charging tiger, Eleanor Whitmore had learned what it meant to remain standing when the world expected her to collapse. Time had tried patiently and relentlessly to wear her down. It began decades earlier, not with drama, but with quiet erosion. Eleanor had been a woman built for usefulness. She had trained as a nurse in her early 20s, tending to bodies broken by war, circumstances beyond their control. she learned early how fear sounded when it rattled in a man's chest, how pain changed the way people breathed, how courage was rarely loud. By the time peace returned, she carried those lessons deep into her bones. They would stay there long after uniforms were folded away and medals forgotten in drawers. She married young, raised children, built a life that looked ordinary from the outside. There were school lunches, late-night arguments, shared laughter that softened the sharp edges of exhaustion. But even then, Eleanor understood something most people didn't articulate until much later in life. Purpose was not permanent. It had to be renewed, chosen again and again. When her husband died unexpectedly, that understanding turned into a wound. Grief did not announce itself with spectacle. It seeped in slowly, hollowing out the days. Eleanor woke each morning with the strange sensation of having arrived somewhere without knowing how. The house felt too large, the silence too intimate. Friends checked in, children called when they could, but the hours in between stretched endlessly. She did what she had always done, kept moving, kept functioning, but inside something vital went quiet. For a time, she believed that was simply what aging meant. You survived long enough, and life gradually narrowed. Loss became familiar. The future shrank to a manageable horizon of routines and doctor's appointments. But Eleanor had never been built for mere survival. At 58, when most people were panning for rest, she found herself restless in a way that frightened her. She could feel her world closing in, each day resembling the last. She knew with the same certainty that had guided her hands in emergency wards that if she did not act, something essential would be lost forever. That was when she volunteered. It was not courage that drove her, not at first. It was necessity, the need to be needed again, to place her hands where they mattered, to stand in the presence of life that depended on her steadiness. The journey to Siberia was punishing. The cold alone felt like a living thing, sharp and unwelcoming. The rehabilitation center was underfunded, understaffed, and overwhelmed. There were no comforting illusions there, no romantic notions about saving wildlife. There was only work, dirty, exhausting, often heartbreaking work. Eleanor thrived. She rose before dawn, layered herself against the cold, and moved from enclosure to enclosure with quiet determination. She learned the rhythms of injured animals, the way fear manifested differently in each species. She spoke little, listened much. Her age, instead of hindering her, became an anchor. She did not rush. She did not panic. She stayed. That steadiness would become her signature. When the tiger cub arrived, barely alive, most saw a lost cause. Eleanor saw something else, not innocence, not beauty, but raw vulnerability. She recognized it instantly because she had lived inside it herself. The cub's aggression was not malice. It was terror. His strength was not gone. It was buried beneath illness and exhaustion. She stayed with him because leaving was not an option. She recognized night after night she chose the floor over comfort, proximity over safety. She lent him her warmth, her voice, her patience. She did not tame him. She did not imagine him as anything other than what he was meant to be. She simply gave him the space to survive. That distinction mattered. When the time came to let him go, It nearly broke her. But Eleanor understood another truth she had learned long ago. Love did not mean possession. Real care sometimes required stepping back, trusting that what you had given was enough to carry someone forward without you. She returned to England. Change. Life resumed its quieter shape, but it no longer felt empty. She carried the memory of those months like a hidden ember, even as her body aged, as joints stiffened and her pace slowed. Something inside her remained alert, awake. Years passed, friends faded, her children built lives elsewhere. Eventually, she moved into assisted care, a decision she accepted without bitterness, but not without sorrow. The world shrank again, this time more convincingly, and still time did not break her. She adapted, she observed, she waited. Nurses at the home described her as polite, composed, and usually self-possessed. They did not see the way she watched documentaries late at night, eyes sharp despite fatigue. They did not hear the silent conversation she held with memory. They did not understand why she insisted on keeping the old wooden cane long after she could have replaced it with something lighter, something modern. That cane had history. It had taught boundaries to a growing cub. It had supported her through years when her body protested, but her will did not. It was not a symbol of weakness. It was a record of endurance. When Eleanor recognized the star-shaped marking on the television screen, something aligned inside her with absolute clarity. This was not nostalgia. It was not confusion. It was recognition paired with resolve. She knew, as she had known many things in her life, that time had not erased what mattered. Her decision to leave the nursing home was not reckless. It was deliberate. She understood the risk better than anyone who tried to stop her, but she also understood something they did not. There are moments when safety is not the highest value. Purpose is. Each mile of the journey tested her body. Pain flared in places she had learned to manage quietly. Sleep came in fragments. Fear surfaced now and then, but it never ruled her. She had lived through worse than exhaustion. She had walked through grief that left no visible scars but nearly ended her spirit. This, by comparison, felt honest. By the time she reached a reserve, Eleanor was not chasing a memory. She was honoring a promise made by a woman who had refused to let despair define her life. Whether the tiger remembered her or not was almost secondary. What mattered was that she had not forgotten who she was. The woman who stood in the snow was not fragile. She was layered with years, shaped by loss, strengthened by choices that demanded courage without applause. She had learned how to be afraid and act anyway, how to love without clinging, how to endure without hardening. Time had taken much from Eleanor Whitmore: youth, companionship, certainty. But it had not taken her core, and that was why, when the tiger ran toward her, she did not move. They almost did not tell Eleanor about the cub at the rehabilitation center. News like that traveled quietly past in low voices between staff who had learned to protect themselves from disappointment. Too many animals arrived already lost, their bodies present, but their futures gone. Hope here had to be rationed carefully. The cub had been found at the edge of the forest, alone in the snow. His mother was gone, killed most likely by poachers whose traps did not distinguish between survival and profit. By the time the Rangers reached him, his breathing was shallow, his small body burning with fever. Pneumonia had already taken hold. He was dehydrated, malnourished, and terrified. The veterinarian had done what protocol demanded: antibiotics, fluids, warmth, observation. After 3 days, nothing changed. The cub refused food. When anyone approached, he hissed weakly, snapping at the air with what little strength he had left. His body shook constantly, not with aggression, but with the effort of staying alive. Each breath rattled in his chest like glass. The discussion was brief and clinical. He was suffering. Resources were limited. There were others who still had a chance. Euthanasia was scheduled for the next morning. Eleanor overheard the conversation while scrubbing a floor stained with mud and disinfectant. She did not interrupt at first. She finished her task slowly, deliberately, as if buying herself time to think. When she finally looked up, her voice was calm. "May I sit with him?" she asked. The veterinarian hesitated. He had learned not to mistake age for fragility, but even so the request surprised him. "He may bite," he said, "and I don't think it will change the outcome." "I understand," Eleanor replied. "I am not asking to change anything, just to be with him." Permission was given with a shrug. There was nothing left to lose. The cub's enclosure was small, designed for containment rather than comfort. Eleanor entered without sudden movement, lowering herself to the ground a short distance away. She did not reach for him. She did not speak at first. She simply sat, her presence quiet and unthreatening. The cub lifted his head weakly and hissed. The sound was thin, more plea than warning. Eleanor did not flinch. She began to speak then, not in commands or reassurances, but in the same low, steady cadence she had once used with wounded soldiers and frightened children. Words mattered less than tone. She let her voice flow, filling the space without demanding anything in return. Hours passed. The cub did not relax. He did not approach, but his breathing slowed slightly. His eyes stayed on her, alert, tracking. That was enough. The next day, Eleanor returned. She brought warm broth instead of solid food, placing it close enough to be smelled, but not close enough to feel like a trap. She retreated to her spot and waited. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, inch by inch, the cub dragged himself forward and lapped at the liquid. Just a few swallows, but it was the first nourishment he had accepted since arriving. By the 4th day, Eleanor was no longer an anomaly. She was part of the cub's environment. Her scent, her voice, her stillness became familiar. He allowed her closer. He allowed her to touch him briefly, tentatively. She could feel how fragile he was beneath her fingers, how light, how hot with fever. Each rib was a question. Would this one be the last? On the 9th night, Eleanor made a decision that would later be described as reckless. She brought her sleeping bag into the enclosure. The staff protested, but quietly they had already resigned themselves to the cub's death. Eleanor was not disrupting a success. She was witnessing an ending. If she wanted to be there for it, they would not stop her. She lay down beside him, careful, respectful, allowing him to choose contact. He was too weak to object. When she pulled him gently against her, His small body trembled violently, then stilled her warmth, her breathing, her heartbeat became an anchor. She stayed like that all night, and the next, by the third morning, the cub ate solid food. By the fifth day, he stood. The change was not dramatic. It did not arrive all at once. It came in increments, so small they could be missed if you were not watching closely. A little more strength in his legs, a little more curiosity, and his eyes, a low vibrating sound that Eleanor felt in her chest before she recognized it as a purr. The staff took notice. The cub was no longer just surviving. He was responding. As his strength returned, so did his personality. He was fearless, curious, and entirely unaware of his own future. Sighs, he chewed on Eleanor's boots, batted at her hands, climbed into her lap with clumsy enthusiasm. His teeth were sharp, his paws grew larger. By the day, Eleanor adapted. She found an old wooden cane in storage and began using it to gently redirect him. When his play became too rough, it became a game between them, a lesson disguised as affection. He learned boundaries without punishment. She learned how quickly he was growing. It was Eleanor who first noticed the marking on his forehead. At first, it was barely visible, just a subtle interruption in the symmetry of his stripes. As weeks passed, it sharpened into something unmistakable, a star dark and perfectly placed between his eyes. Eleanor traced it absent-mindedly one afternoon, and the cub leaned into her touch, eyes closing. As his purr deepened, she named him Frost for the season that had nearly taken him and the resilience that had carried him through it. 6 months passed. Frost was no longer dying. He was thriving. But Eleanor knew this chapter was ending. The center was not a place for a growing tiger. Frost needed space, prey, challenge. He needed a life that did not revolve around human hands. No matter how kind, the decision to release him into the protected reserve was inevitable. The night before his release, Eleanor slept beside him one last time. He was enormous now, his head heavy against her shoulder, his breathing slow and even. She spoke to him quietly in the dark, not because she believed he understood every word, but because presence mattered. She told him he was strong, that he was meant for more than survival, that he would belong to the forest in a way no human ever could. And she made him a promise that one day, when he was free and fully himself, she would come back and see him again, not behind bars, not as a patient, but as what he had always been, meant to become. She knew the promise might be impossible to keep, but she had learned long ago that some promises were worth making, not because they were guaranteed, but because they honored the truth of what had been shared. When Frost was released, Eleanor watched until he disappeared into the trees. She did not cry. She had given him everything she could. What she did not know then was that Frost had given her something too, a reminder that even when the world gives up, connection can still rewrite the ending. The first sound was not a roar. It was the sudden silence. One moment the reserve was alive with motion, rangers calling out coordinates, radios crackling, boots crunching over frozen ground. Eleanor's breath steady but shallow in the cold air. The next, everything seemed to pause, as if the forest itself had drawn in a breath, and refused to release it. Then Frost stepped out from between the trees. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. He emerged with the unhurried authority of an apex predator who knew the land belonged to him. His body was massive, now thick with muscle, shaped by years of hunting and survival. The orange and black of his coat cut violently against the white snow. Every movement precise, economical, lethal. Eleanor saw him clearly before anyone else did. She felt it in her chest first, an inexplicable pressure, a recognition that bypassed reason. Her hand tightened around the old wooden cane, the same one that had traveled with her across continents and decades. She did not step back. Someone shouted her name behind her. Another voice swore sharply. Weapons were raised. Frost lifted his head, his amber eyes locked onto Eleanor and the distance between past and present collapsed, for Frost instinct screamed. First, this was a human, a fragile one, small, slow, alone. His muscles tensed. Automatically, the predator-esque calculus igniting in his nervous system. Years of learned behavior told him to assess, to dominate, to control the space in front of him, but layered beneath that instinct, older, quieter, but unshakably present, was something else. A memory, not a picture, not a narrative. Animals do not remember the way humans do, but they remember sensations, scents, sounds, the way safety feels in the body. Frost smelled her under the cold air and pine and snow. There it was, a faint but undeniable trace, the same presence that had once meant warmth instead of pain, calm instead of fear, life instead of death. Eleanor did not move. Her heart pounded so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. Her body knew exactly how vulnerable it was. 82 years of living had not dulled her understanding of danger, but she also knew something else, something she trusted just as deeply. She had not survived war, loss, and time by panicking. At the edge of fear, she lifted the cane, slowly, deliberately holding it in front of her, the way she had done countless times before, not as a weapon, not as a threat, but as a familiar boundary. And she spoke. Frost, her voice did not shake. It carried across the clearing, thin but steady, shaped by memory rather than volume. It was the same voice that had filled a small enclosure years ago, the same tone that had murmured reassurance through fevered nights. Frost froze, not in mid-motion, but in decision. Every muscle in his body locked. His tail stilled. Snow drifted around him as if he were carved from it. The world seemed to narrow to the space between his eyes and hers. 3 seconds passed. Then Frost charged. Gas tore through the group behind Eleanor. Someone screamed. A safety clicked off. Orders were shouted in overlapping chaos. 260 pounds of pure predator power exploded. Forward, snow flying under his paws as he closed the distance with terrifying speed. Eleanor did not run. She planted the cane more firmly into the ground. She did not raise her arms. She did not shout. She did not beg. She waited. In those final moments, Frost's instincts collided, hidden with memory. As he ran, something deep inside him surfaced, not as thought, but as recognition. The cadence of her voice, the posture of her body, the object held at her waist, not threatening, but guiding. At the last possible instant, Frost dug his paws into the snow. His massive body skidded, muscles screaming, as momentum fought restraint. Snow sprayed into the air as he stopped just feet from her, his breath hot and visible, his chest heaving. Silence fell again. Eleanor could see the star on his forehead clearly, now darker and sharper than she remembered. Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not look away. Frost lowered his head slowly, carefully. He leaned forward and closed his teeth, not on her clothing, but gently around the end of the wooden cane, the same cane he did not bite down. He did not test it. He held it exactly as he had once done as a cub, when play had been a lesson and trust had been the rule. A sound rose from his chest, low, resonant, impossible to mistake. He was purring. Eleanor let out a breath she had been holding for decades. "Oh," she whispered, her voice breaking at last. "You remember?" Frost tugged on the cane, lightly backing away, guiding her with surprising gentleness toward a flat stone near the center of the clearing. Eleanor followed, her legs trembling, not with fear now, but with emotion. She sat. Frost lay down beside her, his massive body pressing against her legs. Solid and warm, he rested his head near her, the eyes half closed, utterly at ease. Around them, the world struggled to catch up. Rangers stood frozen, weapons lowered without conscious decision. Radios hung silent. No one dared move, afraid that motion might fracture the fragile miracle unfolding in front of them. Eleanor reached out. Her hand trembled as it found his fur, thick and coarse beneath her fingers. She traced the star on his forehead with the same motion she had used years ago. Frost leaned into the touch. For a long moment, instinct and memory were no longer separate things. They were fused, inseparable, coexisting in a way no training manual or behavioral study could fully explain. This was not a wild animal becoming tame. This was a wild animal choosing recognition. Eleanor laughed softly through tears, the sound thin but full. "You grew so big," she murmured. "I hope you would." Frost responded by pressing his weight against her a little more, the vibration of his fur traveling through her bones. It was the same sound she had once felt through a sleeping bag on a cold concrete floor, the same reassurance magnified by time. Eventually, footsteps approached cautiously, voices returned, hushed and reverent. But Eleanor barely noticed. She was aware only of the rise and fall of Frost's breathing, the warmth at her sigh, and the profound certainty that some connections do not fade, no matter how many years pass or how wide the world stretches between them. Instinct had brought Frost to her. Memory had told him to stay, and in that meeting point where nature and history overlapped, fear gave way to something rarer. Trust remembered the world did not return to normal after that morning. And the snow, it could not, even after Frost rose, stretch his massive frame, and slipped back into the trees with the quiet grace that had always defined him. Something essential had shifted. The clearing felt altered, as if the ground itself remembered what had happened there. Eleanor remained seated for a long time, her hands still resting on the place where his warmth had been, unwilling to rush the moment into memory. Too quickly, the Rangers were the first to move, though carefully, respectfully, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. Weapons were lowered fully now. Radios crackled back to life with subdued voices, reports spoken in tones that carried awe rather than urgency. No one raised their voice. No one joked. Every person there understood they had witnessed something that could not be reduced to protocol or explanation. Eleanor stood slowly, leaning on her cane, her body ached deeply now, the delayed consequence of fear, cold, and exhaustion. But her eyes were bright, her expression peaceful in a way it had not been when she arrived. Victor approached her with measured steps. The authority in his posture had softened, replaced by something quieter, respected, edged with humility. "I have worked with tigers my entire life," he said carefully. "I believed I understood them." Eleanor offered a faint smile. "So did I," she replied, "until I didn't." The hours that followed passed in a blur. Medical checks were conducted. From a distance, footage was reviewed. Questions were asked, then asked again, as if repetition might make sense of what had occurred. But Eleanor did not linger in the explanations. She had no desire to turn the encounter into spectacle. What mattered to her was simple. She had kept her promise. Over the following days, the reserve changed its rhythm around her. Eleanor was no longer treated as an intruder or a liability. She was listened to. Her observations were recorded, her instincts honed by decades of caring for fragile life were trusted. Frost did not appear every day. Some mornings, Eleanor woke to find only tracks near the cabin, massive and unmistakable. Other days he remained unseen, moving through his territory as he always had, wild and sovereign. But even in absence, his presence lingered, and there were the evenings at dusk, when the forest grew quiet and shadows stretched long across the snow. Frost sometimes appeared at a distance. He never approached too closely. He did not need to. Eleanor would sit on the porch, wrapped in blankets, her cane resting against her knee, and they would share the same space without crossing it. That was enough. Word of the encounter spread far beyond the reserve. Videos circulated, stripped of context and overlaid with speculation. Some called it a miracle, others dismissed it as coincidence, an anomaly best forgotten. Eleanor paid little attention. She understood something many observers did not. This was not about defying nature. It was about honoring it. Frost had not become less wild because he remembered her. If anything, his wildness was the very reason memory had endured. He had lived fully, fiercely, without cages or compromise, and still within that freedom, a trace of care had remained. Love, Eleanor realized, does not imprint itself loudly. It does not demand recognition. It leaves quiet marks that only surface when the conditions are right. Her health declined gradually as she had known it would. Winters were harder. Her steps slowed. Some mornings she needed help standing, but her mind remained clear, her spirit steady. When it was time to leave the reserve, the decision was made. Without drama, Eleanor said goodbye to the forest as one thanks an old friend, not with grief, but with gratitude. She touched the door frame of the cabin once before closing it, a gesture that carried more meaning than words. On the final morning, Frost appeared. He stood at the tree-line, watching as Eleanor was helped into the vehicle. He did not come closer. He did not need to. She raised her hand. He flicked his tail once. That was their farewell. Back in England, Eleanor did not return to the life she had left behind. Her granddaughter moved her into a small cottage where light filled the rooms and silence felt companionable rather than heavy. Photographs lined the walls, or not trophies, but reminders. Eleanor lived to more years. They were quiet years, but not empty ones. She spoke often of Frost, not as a marvel, but as a teacher, to nurses, to visitors, to anyone who would listen. Didn't he owe me anything, she would say. That's why it mattered when she passed. It was peacefully her hand resting on the cane that had supported her through so many seasons of becoming. There was no fear in her final days, only completion. Thousands of miles away in a forest that had never been hers to control, Frost aged as wild animals do, without ceremony, without audience. Rangers noted his movements slowing, his territory shrinking, his visits to the observation cabin becoming less frequent. One morning they found him resting in a meadow near the place Eleanor had once stood unflinching. He did not rise again. They recorded his passing with the same quiet respect he had commanded in life. No monuments were built, no names were carved into stone, but those who knew the story felt its weight settle into them, permanent and instructive. What love leaves behind is rarely visible. It does not linger as possession or obedience. It does not erase boundaries or rewrite instinct. It remains instead as something more resilient, a recognition, a choice, a moment of stillness when fear could have rule but did not. Eleanor Whitmore did not change Frost's nature. She honored it, and in doing so she left behind proof that compassion, when given without condition, does not fade. It waits, it endures, and sometimes against all expectation it remembers. Some stories do not end when the final moment passes. They stay with us quietly, reshaping the way we see the world. This was never just a story about a woman and a wild animal. It was a story about memory, courage, and the kind of love that does not ask for control or reward. Eleanor did not return to the forest to prove anything. She did not come seeking fame, validation, or a miracle. She came because she had made a promise at a moment when a small dying cub needed her, and she understood that promises made in compassion matter even decades later. One of the most powerful lessons of this story is that kindness is never wasted. When Eleanor chose to sit beside a sick cub instead of giving up, she had no idea what the future would hold. She could not have imagined a reunion 24 years later in the heart of the wilderness with a full-grown predator charging toward her. And yet, that single act of care left an imprint strong enough to survive time, distance, and the raw laws of nature. It reminds us that even the smallest choices made quietly and without witnesses can echo far beyond the moment we make them. Another lesson lies in the way Eleanor faced fear. When Frost ran toward her, every instinct told the world that she should run, scream, or fight. Instead, she stood still, not because she was fearless, but because she trusted the bond she had built through patience and respect. Her stillness was not weakness, it was strength rooted in understanding. In a world that constantly tells us to react, to panic, to dominate, her response teaches us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is remain grounded and present. This story also challenges the way we think about animals and the natural world. Frost was never tamed. He was never owned. He lived his life as a wild tiger, free and powerful, and yet within that wildness there was room for recognition and memory. The bond between Eleanor and Frost did not diminish his nature, it honored it. That is a powerful reminder that true connection does not come from control, but from respect. For many of us, there is another quieter message here, one about unfinished promises and time. Eleanor knew her years were limited. She understood that life does not wait for perfect conditions. Instead of letting fear, age, or practicality stop her, she chose to act. She chose to live fully even when it was difficult. Her journey asks us a simple but uncomfortable question. Is there a promise we have been postponing, a calling we have been ignoring, or a kindness we keep telling ourselves we lines give someday? Finally, this story leaves us with hope, not the loud, unrealistic kind, but the steady hope that compassion still matters in a world that often feels harsh and divided. It reminds us that love can cross boundaries we are told are impossible, that memory can survive where logic says it shouldn't, and that being human at its best means choosing empathy even when there is no guarantee it will be returned. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the beauty of compassion and the incredible bonds that can exist between humans and animals, then you in the right place. This channel exists to share stories like this, stories that heal, inspire, and remind us of what truly matters. Please consider subscribing to support the channel. Every subscription helps us continue bringing you meaningful animal stories that touch the heart and restore faith and kindness. Stay with us because there are many more unforgettable stories waiting to be told.